From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Tuesday, February the 23rd, 2021. Israel continued its vaccination campaign for Palestinians today. For those who are residents of East Jerusalem who have Israeli residency cards but live past the security barrier, and for those living in neighboring Palestinian villages who work in Israel. The vaccinations were administered by Magen David Adom paramedics at the Kalandia crossing and coordinated with Israel's health ministry and the IDF's Central Command. The MDA tweeted about the initiative, writing, "Our goal is to safely vaccinate as many residents as possible of the neighboring villages, including those who live across the security barrier." Earlier this month, Israel vaccinated thousands of Palestinians who cross into the country for work from the West Bank and sent vaccines to the Palestinian Authority for Palestinian healthcare workers in the West Bank. Israel's Financial Daily Globes reports today that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said Israel will hand surplus COVID-19 vaccines to the Palestinian Authority, as well as others who have asked for help, saying that while the amounts ordered by Israel are for inoculating its population, over the past month, a limited amount of vaccine has accumulated that hasn't been used, and with this, it has been decided to provide symbolic amounts of vaccine to medical teams in the Palestinian Authority and some countries that have contacted Israel. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke over the phone last night with Israel's Foreign Minister Gabi Ashkenazi, their second conversation since Blinken took office. State Department spokesperson Ned Price said the two discussed a number of issues, including the Biden administration's belief that the two-state solution is the best way to ensure Israel's future as a Jewish and democratic state, living in peace alongside a viable and democratic Palestinian state. Price said the secretary also noted the U.S.'s continuing commitment to opposing unfair one-sided actions against Israel in the multilateral arena, as well as the steadfast partnership between the United States and Israel, and that the two countries would work closely together on challenges ahead. Well, Ashkenazi tweeted his thanks to Blinken for the strong opposition of the U.S. to those one-sided actions against Israel, presumably referring there to the UN and UN bodies like the Human Rights Council, which Blinken is set to address later this week. Ashkenazi also tweeted that the two discussed the fight against COVID-19, and in this context, he wrote, "I shared with the secretary the coordination between Israel and the Palestinians." Blinken tweeted yesterday about the call as well, writing, "Great speaking with Gabi Ashkenazi today to discuss our partnership, regional challenges, and Israel's efforts to combat the COVID-19 pandemic." The United States remains unwavering in its commitment to Israel's security. Well, for what is believed to be the first time the leader of a Canadian political party was arrested and charged with willfully promoting hatred against Jews. Travis Patron, founder and head of the small far-right Canadian Nationalist Party, was taken into custody in the Saskatchewan town of Carlisle last week after social media posts and videos, including one called "Beware the Parasitic Tribe," where he says that Jews infiltrate the media, hijack the central bank, and infect the body politic like a parasite. The arrest follows complaints filed and advocacy efforts from the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, the Friends of the Simon Wiesenthal Centre, and B'nai B'rith Canada, among others. President Joe Biden's pick for U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland spoke about his Jewish background and his family's experience with anti-Semitism at his Senate confirmation hearing yesterday. Senator Cory Booker asked Garland about his motivation to follow his particular career path and his family history. Garland became visibly emotional when he responded, speaking of that history, which saw his grandparents flee pogroms in Russia's Pale of Settlement.
I come from a family where my grandparents fled anti-Semitism and persecution. The country took us in and protected us. And I feel an obligation to the country to pay back. And this is the highest, best use of my own set of skills to pay back. And so I want very much to be the kind of attorney general that you're saying I could become. And I'll do my best to try to be that kind of attorney general.
Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Tuesday, February the 23rd at 7 o'clock. It's from the Aleph Bet. At 7:40, a tour of San Francisco's Temple Emmanuel. At 8, student panelists provide the student perspective on bias and hate, illuminating ways in which anti-Semitism, racism, and anti-LGBTQ plus sentiments are presenting themselves in a more virtual campus setting, part of the ADL's 2020 Never Is Now Summit. At 9, Mark Golub sits down with comic and writer H. Alan Scott, who grew up Mormon but converted to Judaism. At 10, Pastor John Hagee and Rabbi Shlomo Riskin discuss Christians and Israel. And coming up next, it's The Der Show with Alan Dershowitz. And that's the JBS News Update for Tuesday, February the 23rd, 2021. I'm Teisha Bader. Stay healthy, stay well.